they come in and they're like, this is the way I've always been. And, and some of that is, well, yeah, you've always been because maybe this is how your family works.
Yes.
Or maybe it was good for you when you were younger. And now it's becoming a problem.
It's so important to recognize how fear is such a tool of overthinking and anxiety.
And which in the end, what he's saying is, hey, I'm okay, I guess.
Yeah.
I can't be mad at everybody. This is me. And what a freeing thing to accept that. Fear can be good, but fear can be bad, right?
Yeah, it depends on how we apply the emotion.
If we're understanding it. And that's why we have to listen to it.
Yes. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Lighter Side of Heavy Things, where we've got two therapists, myself, Chris Clark, along with Dwayne Horton here, where we kind of take some time to explore some of the lighter side of those heavier things that we get to deal with in our day-to-day. So anyways, we're kind of continuing forward, I guess, with where we'd left off last time, where we were kind of talking about overthinking, thought versus thinking, and we're kind of delving in a little bit more into that idea of what do we do once we start that overthinking? How do we stop? What do we do?
Yeah, and the curse of overthinking, right?
Right.
Because overthinking is really a curse for everybody, ourselves, our clients. It's never a fun thing.
No.
And so, and I think that kind of leads to stopping it seems like the natural next step.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is kind of like, in your mind, one of the first things we need to recognize in order to stop it?
I think one of the first things that definitely is key is recognizing that you do have control, right, over your thoughts.
Yeah.
That it isn't just something that happens to you. You can actually do things about it. You have input, right?
Well, and as therapists, that's something we try very hard to tell our clients. Like, they come in and they're like, this is the way I've always been. And, and some of that is, well, yeah, you've always been because maybe this is how your family works.
Yes.
Or maybe it was good for you when you were younger. And now it's becoming a problem. Maybe it's time to outgrow that. But overthinking could be a way of keeping ourselves safe, but it also is a way of keeping ourselves stuck. And to me, this leads to something I tell my clients all the time is it leads to two lies. Like, right? Anxiety and depression try to tell us lies.
Yes.
That's how they control our lives. Anxiety's lies that we're powerless, right? It takes a mountain, takes a molehill and makes a mountain out of it. And then it tells us you can't beat this because that problem is impossible. You're trying to conquer Everest when you're fat and out of shape, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's impossible. But the reality is it's still a molehill, but the way it spirals it out makes it so big, we feel powerless, right?
Right.
And, with the lie of depression, that we feel worthless. It will say, hey, you can't do this, but not because it's a molehill, it's a mountain out of a molehill. It is because, look at that problem. You're not good enough for this. You don't have what it takes, which spirals into like, oh, you're right. I failed at this thing and I failed at this thing in my life. And then that keeps going out of control, right?
Yeah.
Those two depression, anxiety, they play together. And that really creates a problem. So teaching our clients, hey, you know what? You do have a little bit of control. That is freeing. That's awesome.
Being able to know that there is something that I can do about this.
Right.
That this isn't just how life has to be.
Right.
And I do think that it's really important, as you mentioned, the powerlessness, along with that worthlessness, they do play off of one another so much. And that's often why we do see anxiety and depression together.
Right. The evil twin siblings of mental health, right?
That's right.
They come at you with a knife.
Yeah. Or the ugly stepsisters. You're like Cinderella, right?
Yeah.
But
that's a horrible story.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You get to the Brother Grimm's version.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, let's chop the toes off.
Yeah, chop the toes, chop the heel, all those sorts of things.
How did we get there?
I don't
Anyway.
know. You have to ask the Germans. I don't know about that, right? Anyways, I do think that when we're talking about this, though, those the anxiety, the depression, but also more importantly, we have control over our thoughts.
Right.
There was there were a couple of stories, I guess, that were illustrated pretty well, these parables or
Mm-hmm.
little short stories that talked about this. And these, I guess, to start, one of the first ones, at least to me, that stood out was talking about the idea of the monk in the boat.
Oh, right.
And the, I guess, Reader's Digest condensed version of the story.
And this is a Japanese parable.
Right.
Right.
Right. And the gist of the story basically is there's a new monk who comes to this monastery, and he wants to be his best self, right? He wants to be the best monk there is. And while he's there, he has an elder monk who's kind of assigned to help guide him along this path. Now, an important part of this daily routine that the monk had was needing to meditate, right? For a few hours each day.
For self-mastery, right?
Right.
To gain self-mastery, meditations, that's the whole purpose of it.
And so he goes to meditate one of the first days with the other monks in the monastery. But he mentions there's a cat meowing, or there's dogs barking in the distance, or he hears kids out on the street,
Yeah, I totally relate with this monk. Like the squirrels in life.
And he's just getting more upset with himself because he feels like he can't focus.
Right.
And so he decides,
every ADHD person empathizes with this guy, I tell you that.
And so he decides, you know what, I'm going to go out of the monastery. I'm going to go maybe out into the woods, and that'll help me focus to meditate better. Well, he gets out there, and lo and behold, guess what? There's other things out in the woods that are distracting him. He gets angry about this. He gets upset with himself.
Right. Why can't I do it, right? Is that the voice of depression, of anxiety? Like, why am I so worthless? Why can't I do this? Other people can.
Right. And well, then you have the lie of anxiety coming in. I'm powerless to stop this, right? I'm changing my venue. Why isn't it changing?
Right.
He ends up going out to a lake and ends up finding a boat while he's out on the lake, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he rows out into the lake, and he ends up finding that it's completely peaceful out there. No one's bothering him. And while all this is happening, that elder monk is checking in with him. And this monk keeps mentioning to him how frustrated he is. And the monk ends up asking him, have you found yet what is making you angry?
Mm-hmm.
And he, this monk keeps telling the elder monk, well, it's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. It's all these outward things, whether it's animals, other monks, kids, other things of that nature. There's always something that is making him angry, that he can't meditate very well. And the monk just tells him, or the elder monk tells him, once you're able to find out what it is that's making you angry, you're going to have peace.
Right.
That's what it'll be. So anyways, again, the monk ends up feeling like he's found his peaceful spot out in the middle of the lake on the boat.
This Reader Digest version is a Reader Digest.
Yeah. And he ends up one day while he's out there, right? Another boat comes along and crashes into him.
Right. Well, not only does it crash, you guys, I love the story of how the guy's like, stop, get away from me.
Yeah, he's yelling at the boat, right?
Could you imagine being that person? I know you're there.
Yeah. And the boat crashes into him, and he's so upset, right? And this monk goes to give whoever's steering this boat, a piece of his mind, and he ends up getting up in the boat, walks on over to the other side of the boat and looks out, and he realizes there's no one in the boat.
Right.
Right. And then that's when he ends up realizing.
Can you imagine what he felt?
Oh, yeah.
Like, could you imagine that? I'd be like, oh.
Yeah. I feel...
And, sound echoes more on water. You're like, start checking the shores. Like, please don't let there be fishermen out there.
What's funny is that feeling, though, I feel like that's what a lot of our clients end up feeling once they master this, right?
Right.
Because in this moment, the monk ends up realizing that there was no one for him to be upset at, and that the anger was coming from within, and it was solely due to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he takes the boat back, goes back to the monastery, sits down with the other monks, and begins to meditate. And that's when the other monk comes to him and says, so you finally found what is making you angry.
And which in the end, what he's saying is, hey, I'm okay, I guess.
Yeah.
I can't be mad at everybody. This is me. And what a freeing thing to accept that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I actually like the other story to a lot, because it talks about how we think changes the way our moods are. Like, so this one again was this Zen master was off meditating, and a samurai warrior, a great samurai warrior, came up to him and said, Zen master, and just rudely interrupted him and said, well, the Zen master while he was meditating,
Mm-hmm.
but said, hey, Zen master, I need you to teach me how to have peace. Teach me between heaven and hell. Tell me about that. And I love the Zen master. Like, this is so funny to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
My personality. He's like, the Zen master looks at him and says, why would I even talk to you, you little slob?
Yeah.
You're so ugly, right?
Starts beating down on him.
Yeah, who are you? Like, how dare you interrupt me, this type of thing, right? And then the Zen master went back in and started meditating again. Well, the samurai warrior started getting pissed off, right? Like,
Yeah.
how dare he? Just insulted my honor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Draws his sword to go out and slay him and chop off his head, right? And the Zen master then opens his eyes and said, that's hell. And the samurai warrior, in the middle of holding that sword, was like, oh my, he just taught me a lesson in real life. That hell is a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's a lot like what overthinking is this hell. It's like spinning, no relief, right?
Right.
And then the samurai warrior continued and decided, you know what, he's right. Put his sword down and started to show honor to the man and said, I am sorry, please forgive me. Thank you for looking at teaching me that lesson about hell. And the Zen master looks up and says, that's heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is the power of it. Our minds, we determine it.
Right.
How we quickly perceive it. Either we'd spin out into hell or we could spin into heaven. And it's the mindset. It's what we're willing to accept.
Right.
Right? So how we react determines our moods. And do we react in anger? Or do we react in, like, oh boy, right?
Yeah.
Or, you know what, that's great. Or I'll fix this. Or, however we want to fix it.
And I think that what both these stories also indicate, that important thing about how do we change how we're reacting, is that idea of we need to slow it down.
Yes.
Right?
I like that.
In both stories, I mean, you have the monk, he just needed to chill for a second, honestly, right?
Yeah.
Not be so quick to, take it personally that these things are interrupting my meditation.
Right.
Or the samurai and the Zen with the Zen master to, go to anger, feel so, peeved in this situation, that if both parties just allowed themselves to slow the emotion down, slow down how they were thinking about things, like they wouldn't have struggled in the ways that they did.
And part of slowing down, as you said, was change the way they think, but it also opened up space for new emotion. Humility, right? Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it's not the world. Maybe I'm really mad at me, right?
And that openness when it comes to the emotions are so important, right? Because if we can accept the idea that really emotions are neither good nor bad,
right?
Outside of, maybe there's a few outliers, but really when it comes to it, think about sadness. There's great reasons to be sad, and maybe there's reasons that you feel like I shouldn't be sad. And we start thinking less of ourselves because of that emotion. But really, is it the emotion's fault, or is it how we think about the emotion that's causing those troubles?
Right. Or is it past stuff coming up, right? It's a very complex picture. But like you said, we're born into this life as we are. We're changing, we're improving, but there is no manual on emotions, right?
No.
So nobody knows how to really deal with them, and that's scary for them. But the idea of emotions are neither good nor bad is something that we talk about often with our clients. Like, they're saying, oh man, I'm so depressed. And I think, oh good. Now you got an opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
Like, people who've gone through that deep darkness, they become compassionate and loving when they get out, right?
Yeah.
And people who conquer those mountains, the mountain out of a molehill, become stronger and more confident because they faced an internal battle that was real.
Right. And, I feel like, as you mentioned, you touched on something that I think is important, that idea that typically we see the greatest healing occur for people once they start to have compassion for themselves.
Right. And humility is required for us to learn something new.
Right. And so I think what's important, along with understanding emotions really neither are good or bad, is also listen to what it is the emotions are trying to communicate to us, because that's what their primary job is.
Right. Why are they here? What's
Mm-hmm.
bringing them in here? Right. And something you bring up, we talked about this week with clients. Um, there are emotions that came up in working with our clients, and our clients like, I'm not touching that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you were very curious with your client and saying, I wonder why that emotion feels scary to you.
Yeah.
Why does that feel unsafe just to even allow it to be here? What tells you that it's bad?
Right. And I think that that's so important to recognize, how fear is such a tool of overthinking and anxiety, right? But it doesn't need to be. But that's where we go with it often.
Right. I think your fear, depression, and anxiety are like the most misunderstood emotions.
Yes.
Fear, and especially fear and anxiety, the relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fear is an emotion that once we feel it, it's the body saying, hey, wait, I perceive something in this surrounding, right? You're down a dark alley. Something's moving behind you. I don't know what it is. Run,
Right.
right?
Get out of there.
Yeah, like, why are you out in the savannas at night? There's a tiger right there, right? Fear. Once you get away from whatever the body is sensing that's causing fear, it goes away.
Right.
The difference with anxiety is that it stays on, and we have to learn that shut-off valve, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're kind of talking about here.
Right. Because, as you mentioned, fear is very normal. We see it all the time with kids, right?
Yes.
They might have an innate fear about something in particular, but if you watch a child work through it in a very healthy way, they end up determining that this thing that I was afraid of, maybe I don't need to be afraid of it. It's not as big of a deal as I thought it once was.
Right.
And once they're able to work past that, then it's gone.
And it's one of those things that, but it's not just gone. It leaves self-confidence is what's left, right? Sarah and I were watching a YouTube short the other day. Is of this little man. He probably was like 2, 3, trying to lift like a normal tire. And, no one was around to tell him he couldn't do it. But man, watching him try to lift it the first few times was not going well,
Mm-hmm.
right? But his wise parents sat back and let him keep going. And he finally lifted it and got it out, stand upright. And he had like this little yes look on him. And he even did that. And I'm like, what great parents are there?
Mm-hmm.
That is awesome that parents would not go up to that little one and say, you can't do it. Instead, let their spirit find something awesome. But that's the same thing when we conquer our anxiety. When we conquer our anxiety, we're going to have those moments like, heck yeah, I just did that.
Mm-hmm.
And it leaves confidence. It's so amazing. And so fear can be good, but fear can be bad, right?
Yeah, it depends on how we apply the emotion.
Mm-hmm. If we're understanding it. And that's why we have to listen to it.
Yes.
This came up several times this last week for me, right? I had a client who've had really hard times. Bad things happen to them. Whether, not speaking specifically of any one of them, but whether it's like, hey, I lost a job, or, I found out my partner was having an affair, or my kids did this at school,
Mm-hmm.
right? All these things come up, big emotions. And I have to sit there like, yeah, that's kind of amazing, isn't that? I wonder what's coming up in you. And one of the emotions, I guess, is kind of misunderstood as anger. And
oh man,
yeah, right. And they come in here and they think they need to be proper.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you know what? In here, you're allowed to have your sailor language.
Yeah.
What happens in here stays in here. I promise.
Yeah.
But you need to allow it out. Let it out. Just say what's there. And it's funny, as soon as they are able to remove that barrier and just access that that anger, yes, they definitely sound angry, right? You got to be cautious with it, but they sound angry. But more often than not, it quickly turns into sadness, anxious, fear. You start seeing other things come up. Their anger was trying to protect them from all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they get into those other emotions, like, oh, so you're anxious now. I wonder what it is. It's like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do now, right?
Yeah, what does this mean?
So my goal with them is just to let them talk it out, right? I have to call it word vomiting, especially with my kids. It's like they're having a rough day. I'm like, all right, come, I'm doing dishes, come help me with dishes, and you word vomit. Say whatever you want. And I give my kids permission to say whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
And they won't be in trouble because we know that they are trying to um, work through the thoughts in their head, right? Because they're overthinking it. And, you know, at one point, my daughter once said, after saying something that bothered her that day, she said, you know, Dad, now that I've word vomited, I realized my reaction to that was pretty stupid. And I was so proud of her. She went and fixed it. I was like, that is amazing. Our clients do that. I mean, with one client called me this week, said, I'm in crisis. I said, great, let's talk. I just did that. Let them word vomit. Let's listen. But then when they come in, they're spiraling like this, right? Their thoughts are like, I'm like, okay, just listen to the emotion. Let's start with anger because that's usually the loudest, right?
Right.
And it's guarding everything else, so you're not going to get past it. Then let's go to the sadness or anxiety and bring through all that. Let them put words to it. Give them permission to feel it. Feel it. And then once they feel it, they're like, oh, okay. And by the end of that, I mean, nothing in the external world had changed, but their mindset changed.
Right.
And they now had a path forward. Yes, we talked about a lot of it came up from trauma, but that's something we could deal with later. But they wouldn't even in EMDR, we wouldn't be able to access that if they were afraid to go toward that. Right?
And I think where you're leading is to something that I feel is very important, and that's being able to really come to that idea of how do we stop that thinking, right?
Right.
Because as you mentioned with that one client of yours, there was too much going on for her. And so a way that we can go about that is utilizing the pause technique.
Right, from Joseph Wynn, right?
Right.
And you'll find that in the Don't Believe Everything You Think book.
Yeah. And he goes into great detail kind of talking about it. But I think what's very interesting about that idea is basically postulating how we do have a choice. And by choosing what we want to do, it's almost like in this technique, it's like we're presenting ourselves different various forks in the road.
Right.
Where we can, you make this choice, all right, this is where it's heading. If you make this choice, this is where it's heading.
Well, and for our viewers, you could find it in the book we just talked about, but it's the pause, 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 right? So the pause, what does the P stand for? Right, pause, right? But what are you supposed to do with that?
That's just simply stopping yourself.
Well, and it's not just stopping, it's breathing. Right? Taking several deep breaths. Why is breathing so important? Especially on like an organic, like a biological systems world. Why is breathing so important in this?
Because typically when we're anxious or dealing with some other big emotion, we aren't breathing the best, right?
And what does that do?
Well, that overwhelms our system because our brain is very much designed to think, you know what, I need oxygen to be able to function. And if it's not getting its oxygen, then it's going to try to figure out what do I need to do about that. And that's why, but also because the emotions that are getting mixed in, it might not regulate itself very well with that. That's why, for example, when it comes to panic attacks, anxiety attacks, whatever we want to call it, that, hyperventilating's very common. But that's the body's way of, I'm trying to get oxygen because I'm not getting enough to calm myself down.
Right. And what that does on the biological scale is absolutely right, is it sends our system into a different problem. Right? So if often people who are anxious with my clients, I'm like, you notice how long you held your breath there? And they'll be like, no. Always at the beginning, I was holding my breath. I mean, I think so. Why don't you notice it? And they always say yes. So holding our breath is bad. But also hyperventilating. There's a real reason, and I tell my clients this. The reason we need to breathe is because when something happens, our body goes into fight or flight mode.
Mm-hmm.
Fight or flight or freeze mode, right? The system that regulates everything in our body is our blood system, right? It needs to have a pH of 7.4, plus or minus 0.2. It is a very highly regulated system. That is regulated through our breathing, how well we breathe. If I'm holding my breath, I'm not exhaling any carbon dioxide. That makes the pH go down, become more acidic.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm hyperventilating, makes the pH go up, and then I'm hyperacidic. I'm more basic. And what happens with that is that then the body's like, wait, if you keep going either direction, you're overwhelming the buffer system here. We got to do one or two things. Either I knock you out,
Yeah.
or
I'm gonna reset the system.
I'm gonna reset the system. You're acting stupid, so goodbye, right? You know, and it does that because the blood has to stay at that range. If we're holding our breath or shallow breathing, the only time oxygen ever enters the blood is if it gets into the alveoli of our lungs, the outermost parts of that sac,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we're just kind of breathing, but shallow breathing, all we're doing is moving air up and down and up and down and up and down. It's not actually getting into that.
Right.
So taking a pause and just taking a couple deep breaths, 10 seconds, is a way of saying, kicking your mind out of the limbic system, which is the emotional regulation system, which is where the fight or flight system is, putting you into the prefrontal cortex, right?
Right.
Just exhale. That's why I tell my clients, exhale really, really good. Get a real good exhale. As far as vacate those lungs as much as you can.
You know, and I think another thing that's actually very important about this, about the breathing, is, and I mention this with my clients as well, and I'm sure many of you have probably noticed this. If I invite you to begin to notice your breathing, breathe in, breathe out, it's hard to think about anything else because now you're consciously breathing.
Yes.
And that stops the thinking, the overwhelming, right? Because now we're paying attention to something else rather than spiraling or
Right.
zipping back and forth, right?
Which is interesting because what you did is you hijacked the limbic system, is the primal region of our brain,
Mm-hmm.
which is responsible for all autonomic nervous system, including breathing. But if you intentionally breathe, you're hijacking that system with your prefrontal cortex.
Yep.
Kicking that out and saying, hey, you that part, it's like the reverse. You know, like if we're sucking at breathing and the brain's just going to say, all right, time to pass out, right?
Right.
Now the prefrontal cortex is saying the same thing to the limbic system. Man, you suck. I'm taking over.
That's right.
Right?
We're stepping in.
We're stepping in.
So once you're able to pause and we start breathing, that's when we get to the A and we start asking ourselves a very important question, right? And that question is this thinking making me feel the way I want?
Right.
Right? Or if I'm suffering, I'm having a bad time, do I want to keep feeling that way? Right? So ask yourself that question.
And that may sound coarse or, rough, but it's true. What we're acknowledging is agency.
Yeah.
You have the choice. And if you're like, I don't want to think this, like, oh, okay.
Right.
Which leads you naturally to the you, which is understand that you have that power to let go.
Mm-hmm.
It may feel impossible. We may be dealing with one of the many lies we've talked about, right? But understanding that and embracing it and acknowledging it starts to give courage to the system.
Right. And after we've done that, we get to the S, where we say or repeat that thinking is the root cause of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We recognize that my suffering, if I'm feeling that way, is caused because of my thinking that I'm applying to it.
Which sounds, again, horrible. It sounds like you're being hard on somebody. But as therapists, like, no, isn't that awesome?
Mm-hmm.
You have control.
Yeah.
Like, you can choose. You don't need to ask permission from your boss, from your husband or a partner, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to ask permission from anybody. You are valuable as you are now. You choose.
Right.
And I think that's pretty empowering.
Mm-hmm.
Which leads into the E. This is one of the harder ones, and this is one we already kind of touched on, is experience all the emotions fully, not, without judgment or resistance or thinking, just let them be.
Mm-hmm.
And that was hard because you get the anticipation of fear, right? It's
Yeah.
like jumping into a pool of cold water, right? You're like, oh my, and you panic. Or like my wife, she hates heights. We went.
Both of you hate heights.
Oh, I hate heights, but there's some things I can do. Like we went on a cruise and we were like rock climbed up on that wall, right? Well, I can let go. I can just jump right off that wall because I have that safety lane. I don't know why my brain says I can do it. Sarah doesn't have that same connection. She's like, I know it's going to be fine. Shut up down there. I will let go when I'm ready. And she's got to let her mind work through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you got to feel that without resistance, right?
Right.
The anticipation is what's worse, the worst part of it. That's what holds that death grip on the wall.
Yeah.
The anticipation fear. And so learning to allow the emotions to come. Like you said, maybe it doesn't feel safe. Okay. But the good news of doing it in therapy is you're not alone.
Yeah. Someone's there to help you regulate.
Right.
Right. And, there's so many times I've had clients where we start going through this and we, get to the point I'm like, okay, what is the what emotions here? What is it telling you? And they're like, I've had many clients tell me, well, I feel like I need to ugly cry and I don't want to. And it's like, okay. But I wonder what would happen if you did let yourself let go for just a moment.
Right.
To feel like you didn't have to control the emotion. That, you could let it you can just experience it. That's it. And for many of my clients, when they allow that to happen, they just allow the emotion to be there. It's so funny because afterwards they're like, wow, I feel better. Mm-hmm. And not only do they feel better, but they'll also say, I don't feel that way anymore.
I'm free, right?
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. Which is the part of that idea of what we do a ton of trauma work.
Yeah.
Like 90% trauma work.
Mm-hmm.
That's our specialty.
Yeah.
But you can't dive into trauma work if people are afraid of the emotions.
Yes.
And so this is why techniques like this are so powerful for us.
Mm-hmm.
Is because we could, not just for us, but for our clients, because then they can experience it safely.
Yes.
Then they can say, oh, I know I can work through this.
And
then they're not afraid to feel that anymore when they're out there. Now their bandwidth for emotions goes from, this big to, oh, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're in a preparation stage to start working through the bigger things.
Yeah.
Because if their bandwidth is for this, the only effective work that gets done is between that little line. But if those lines are like farther apart, we have a much greater range and time frame for them to fit and bounce around in those emotions.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Kind of have fun in there.
Yeah.
Without it being so scary.
I think I've probably traumatized my clients with that word. They hate that word fun because I think it's fun.
Yeah.
But, I love that quote from Jonathan Safran Foer, who says, I think and I think and I think. And I thought myself out of happiness a million times, but never once into it.
Right. And I think that comes back around to all of this, that kind of as we mentioned last time, one of the biggest tools that you have of being able to control your thinking and how you're feeling is just allow yourself to be present.
Yes.
Right? That if you're present, typically in most moments, and you just allow the emotions to be there and you feel them and then they move on, you move on, life moves on and it feels so much better rather than feeling like I got to fix everything or got to control it all.
Right.
And so, yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else that you feel like is important to add as we kind of close out this idea of how do we stop thinking?
I would just encourage people to notice, like you said, that be mindful of this moment and even try the pause technique because that is a mindfulness thing. Remember, just real quick, pause, pause, take a breath.
Mm-hmm.
A, ask, is this making me feel the way I want to feel? Yep. Is there a better way to think? Is there errors in this thought?
Yeah. Am I wrong?
Am I wrong? Right? Understand that, you have the power to let go. That's the you. Repeat to yourself or say, that mantra that thinking is the root cause of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And then allow yourself to experience the emotions. if you like this and other things, we're going to be doing a lot of this stuff.
Yep.
We love to hear back from people if there are ideas, thoughts, feelings, questions, directions people have. We have a lot of things on the power of thought. We think this is a good one for January.
Yes. There's a lot of thinking going on.
There's a lot of thinking, a lot of goals, but we're also conquering a lot. So if you have any questions, please do follow us on Instagram and Facebook.
Yep.
We're gonna
like and subscribe
like
here
and subscribe. Yes,
on
please. That will
YouTube.
help us. Yes.
Also,
and share it.
Yeah, share. Let us know what you think of this kind of new setup. Trying something new out, right?
Yeah. I'm never satisfied, poor Chris.
So let us know if you like the way this looks or the format of what we kind of have set up today. And yeah, anyways, that kind of, I feel, covers everything. And we'll continue on next week. But again, thank you for joining us for another episode of The Lighter Side of Heavy Things. And we'll see you guys later.